Greetings, friends. This is the incident of the 10th of April, 1912. RMS Titanic, the world's largest and most luxurious ship in its time. It set out on its first voyage. It was traveling from Southampton, England, to New York. All kinds of people were aboard, renowned industrialists and actors as well as immigrants who were on their way to America in search of a better life. It was commanded by the 62-year-old senior captain Edward John Smith. There was a lot of excitement regarding this ship among the passengers, public, and the media. It was not only the world's largest ship, around 269 meters in length and more than 53 meters high, the luxury on this ship was awe-inspiring. In those times, it cost $7.5 million to build the ship, which, if you take inflation into account, is equal to $400 million today. The facilities and decorations inside the ship could even leave a five-star hotel behind. Stained glass mirrors, ornate wood paneling, 2 grand staircases, heated swimming pool, a Turkish bath, an electric bath, a gym, a squash court, 4 restaurants, 2 barbershops, and a library as well. Moreover, the kind of safety features that were used to build the Titanic, this ship was believed to be unsinkable. It was a ship that could never sink. It was that safe. White Star Line was the name of the company that built this ship. The vice president of this company was so confident regarding that, he had come out in front of the public and said that this ship is unsinkable. But 2 days later, after setting out on its first voyage, on the 12th of April 1912, Titanic began to get its first ice warnings. The Atlantic Ocean that Titanic was crossing in order to get to America was replete with ice. There were mountains of ice, icebergs that were a danger to this ship. These warnings are not an unusual thing. The ships that sail the oceans often communicate through radio and signal the nearby ships about ice being present in their vicinity and seek caution in their path. After getting these warnings, Titanic changed its course twice to avoid danger, but it did not reduce its speed. It continued its journey towards its destination at a speed of 21.5 knots, which is equal to 40 kilometers per hour. 2 days later, on the 14th of April, 1912, there were 7 more ice warnings, but Captain Smith and his crew ignored these warnings. They did not slow the speed of the Titanic. Slowly, the day draws to a close, the sun sets, and the temperature sinks. The notable thing about the night of the 14th of April was that the moon was not visible. Without the moon, there was no moonlight, and the visibility was low on this night. There was a crow's nest on the ship, a small platform at a height which could be called a lookout point. Someone is made to sit atop it so that they can keep watch on the track of the ship to look out for traffic or obstructions. The person sitting here has to face very low temperatures. The cold winds were blowing at a very fast pace. Moreover, it was nighttime. The cold winds make the eyes tear up, which makes it difficult to see. At 11:39 p.m., a man named Frederick Fleet was atop the crow's nest. Suddenly, he saw before himself a huge iceberg. He rang the bell thrice quickly so that the people below could be alerted, then picked up the phone and called the officers on the bridge. He screams that there was an iceberg in front of them and that the ship should be steered immediately. First Officer William heard this message and signaled the engine room that the ship should be steered in the left direction. But unfortunately, it was too late. Just 1 minute later, at 11:40 p.m., the ship crashed into the iceberg. The Titanic was a new breed of luxury life. The Titanic left port of Southampton, England. Among the passengers were many of the wealthy and influential, the band plays, the gay tunes, and American red time dancers. The time was 11:40. The iceberg grazed the right side of the ship, and all of a sudden, she lifted up quickly. This iceberg was not a small one. It was 200 by 400 feet in length, as big as a football field, and was so high that it was matching the crow's nest in height. Scientists estimate that the iceberg weighed as much as 1.5 million tons. Titanic's front right side collided with the iceberg, specifically near the bow. Now, what is the bow? You can see in this picture that the part right at the front is the bow. The part above the bow is called the stern, and the protruded part below is called the keel. For around 10 seconds, the ship grazed against the iceberg and a huge dent was formed. Due to this, small holes formed in the main body of the ship. You might wonder how that is possible. How can a piece of ice tear through metal? If you use the ice in your fridge, then yes, it won't cut through metal. But keep in mind the weight of a mountain of ice. It is true that even wood cannot cut through metal, but even then, your metal car can crash into a tree and get deformed completely. Similarly, since the iceberg was so big and heavy, it caused massive damage to Titanic. A few seconds after the collision, the ship's captain, Smith, and architect, Thomas Andrews, arrived at the site to see how much damage had the ship incurred due to the impact. When they saw it, they realized that the ship would sink. They were completely shocked upon seeing this. They thought that this ship was unsinkable. At the beginning of the video, I'd mentioned that this ship was considered unsinkable, owing to impressive safety features. There were two main safety features which led to this belief. First, this ship had a double-bottom hull. The main body of the ship is called a hull. A double-bottomed hull would mean two layers. Even if the layer below got damaged, the second layer could save the ship. Second, the hull of the ship was divided into 16 separate watertight compartments. Even if 4 out of 16 compartments were filled with water, the ship would still sail. It would make no difference to the ship. But the impact created by the iceberg was on the side of the ship. The double-bottom hull proved to be of no use. The sides only had one single layer. Second, the impact was so large that 6 out of 16 watertight compartments were breached. Water was filling in all of them. The limit was 4. The inundation of 6 compartments meant that the ship couldn't be saved from sinking. The unsinkable ship would sink. 20 minutes after the collision, at 12 a.m., Captain Smith ordered his crew to send a distress call over the radio. The nearby ships would maybe detect it and come to save them. Senior Radio Jack Phillips turns out to be the hero of our story. One after the other, he began sending distress signals. There was no response. He sent another and another. There must be some ship out there that would pick up their distress call. 20 minutes later, at 12:20 a.m., there was a ship called RMS Carpathia that was present near the Titanic. It detected the signal. He spoke to the operator of Titanic over radio and directed his ship to move towards Titanic and go save them. The problem was that despite its closeness, this ship was 107 kilometers away. Even if it moved towards the Titanic at its top speed, it would take 3.5 hours to reach the Titanic. Would the Titanic ship stay put for 3.5 hours? The rest of the crew members lit up flares and rockets in the sky in the hope that a ship nearby would notice them. But unfortunately, apart from the ship Carpathia, there was no response from any other ship. Meanwhile, Captain Smith ordered the evacuation of passengers using the lifeboats on the ship. As per protocol, women and children would be given preference to board the lifeboats. As for the passengers on the ship, they were not that scared. Most of the passengers believed that Titanic was an unsinkable ship. There is no need for worry. After all, the company that put out ads claimed this again and again. So, yes, they might have hit an iceberg, but the ship wouldn't sink. For this reason, the first lifeboat that went down had a capacity of 65 people, but only 28 went. Half the lifeboat remained empty as it was lowered. With the passage of time, compartments began to be filled with water, one after the other. The ship began to tilt. Gradually, the passengers realized that the ship could indeed sink. When this realization dawned, there was chaos, and people began to run around in panic. By 1 in the night, so much water had filled the compartments in the front that the bow of the ship had gone underwater. Due to this, the rear part of Titanic surfaced out of the water. The propellers at the back surfaced out of the water. When the ship tilted to this degree, pandemonium reigned. People began to fight with one another for a seat in the lifeboat. The problem was, there was a scarcity of lifeboats on the ship. There were only 20 lifeboats which could accommodate only approximately 1,200 people. But there were around 2,200 aboard the ship. At 2:05 a.m., the last lifeboat was lowered from the Titanic, but 1,500 people were still on board. In this chaos, some people tried snatching their place in the lifeboats, but some people had accepted their fate and stayed back on the ship. The end was chaotic. Everybody was crying, praying, trying to get into the few lifeboats that were left. As per eyewitnesses, the ship broke into two halves at around 2:20 and then slowly began to sink. It did not take even 3 hours for the unsinkable ship to sink. Of 1,500 people aboard the ship, either they drowned with the ship or the ones that knew how to swim were killed by hypothermia. The temperature of the water was -2 degrees Celsius. If you fall into the water at this temperature, you die within minutes due to hypothermia. It is said that the captain of Titanic, Edward Smith, stayed at the wheel until the end and drowned with the ship. Some even believe that he committed suicide by killing himself. The ship RMS Carpathia, which had set out to save the Titanic, reached this location around 3:30 to 4 a.m. to save the people on the ship, but it was 1 hour late. After the disaster of the Titanic, questions were raised, many controversies took birth, investigations were conducted, and some unknown facts surfaced that shocked everyone. How would it feel if I say that there was another ship 37 kilometers away from Titanic that night, which could make it in time to save the passengers of the Titanic? It is true. The ship was SS Californian. 1 hour before the Titanic hit the iceberg, the last iceberg warning was issued by SS Californian. They had warned, "Watch out. There are a lot of icebergs in the ocean here." After that, at 11:15, the radio operator on the Californian ship had switched off the radio. The Californian ship had stopped for the night and was not moving ahead, keeping the danger in mind. Since the ship had stopped for the night and the radio was off, it did not receive the distress signal. The ship was so close to the Titanic that the passengers on the deck of the Titanic could see the ship on the horizon. When the officers were boarding the passengers in the Titanic, one officer even remarked that he could see a ship in the distance and that it would come to save them soon, and so there was no need to worry. But this Californian ship did not come even when rockets and flares were lit up. It is reported that after 12 a.m., the crew members on the Californian ship had actually seen the rockets fired from Titanic. It is reported that after 12 a.m., the crew members on the Californian ship had actually seen the rockets fired from Titanic. But they misunderstood them as fireworks being used in celebration. This was a huge misunderstanding. Had the Californian ship reached the Titanic in time, many lives could have been saved. But because of this mistake, a tragedy of such magnitude occurred. Later investigations were carried out, and it was revealed that the Californian ship was only 37 kilometers away and could have reached Titanic in time to save the passengers. This led to heavy criticism of the ship's captain and crew. On the other hand, the RMS Carpathia was praised for doing everything it could to help. Following this disaster, changes were made in the maritime laws and safety regulations. The number of lifeboats was increased, and regular lifeboat drills became mandatory. Radio communication was kept operational, 24 hours a day on ships. The International Ice Patrol was formed to monitor iceberg activity in the North Atlantic Ocean. This was the tragedy of the Titanic, one of the most catastrophic maritime disasters in history. Even today, more than 100 years later, it continues to be remembered.